The following is a presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Hello and welcome to the Small Council Matters podcast. I am Wendy Hembrock and our council is in session. So first, let's go around the table and introduce yourselves, Maesters.
Hey everybody, I'm Shannon from out in Vancouver, Washington, and I am the Realm's Delight. And I also don't think I'm going to be grilling sausages for a little while.
Oh, this is Christine, your mistress of communication, correction, and vacation, baby, coming to you from the Tennessee River in Knoxville. I am on a boat, and it is currently rocking.
Well, I am Jesse Jackson, DFW, not on vacation, but feeling like it's a vacation because I'm here with three of my favorite people, and we have a season finale to talk about. I am at Jesse Jackson, DFW on Twitter. You can hear me talking Bruce Springsteen on Set Listing Bruce, John Hyatt on Perfectly Good Podcast, and Doctor Who on Next Stop Everywhere. Whew. I do too many podcasts.
That's a lot. And we are in no way enabling you further. I am Wendy Hembrock. I am your Maester of Links and Documents. And today we are discussing episode 8 of season 2, the finale, The Queen Who Ever Was. Reminder, we'd love to hear from you. Ravens, comments, calls, jump in our Discord channel we have dedicated to Game of Thrones. You can reach us on social media on X/Twitter at SCM_pod or at Tuning into Sci-Fi. Come by our webpage, and there's a link that you can use to leave us a voicemail, or you can call us at 706-927-8478. We'd love to hear from you. So we do have a bunch of links and our news section. First, we talked last week about our love for the dog of the rat catcher, and Christine found out that so do a lot of other people, and they're really hoping that our good boy gets a happy ending. We also have the usual links to the official HBO podcast. We have news about the duration of House of the Dragon. We're going to wrap things up in 4 seasons, so we're halfway through. We also have a link to what is probably a common response to this finale, which we'll get into, titled, Wait, That's It. We also have an interactive map, which is a very cool resource for folks. And we talked a lot last week about the sounds of the dragons, and Shannon found a cool article from the sound designer about dragons. So some fun stuff to check out.
Yeah, we're not alone in rooting for the dog. If I had wanted to see one tiny scene of the dog, just like happy with some of the small folk, or maybe he becomes a palace dog or something, but alas, we were denied. I have not listened to the official podcast yet, but I did read the article about the show ending. They always said from the beginning it was going to be 3 or 4, and that seems about right for the material in the book that covers this. So he was kind of canny about how many episodes, because I would love to go back to 10 per, but he said we might keep pace with how things were in season 2. So I don't know if that means the same budget or the same number of episodes or the same production time or what. But time was one of the reasons that we only got 8 this year, and perhaps kind of where we ended where we did. So with only probably 16 remaining, I think it's going to be like a full-out sprint to the end. And the sound designer article, she is a hoot. They talked about lots of funny things. Some dragons had input of like 30 different animal sounds and how they snuck little fun things in there. And then notes about how each of the dragons should sound from Ryan Condal or George or something like that. Like Vagar's creaky old nag, and Caraxes is wheezing, and you can always hear like there's multiple layers within her throat as she's making a sound. So that's a lot of fun. There's some good reading in there.
So I don't see how we're going to wrap things up in 2 more seasons if they continue at this pace. That was actually a little discouraging for me to find that out. As for the Hollywood Reporter article titled, "Wait, That's It?" I'm going to pull some highlights that really rang true with me from that. The finale felt a bit like deja vu. The first season finale ended with a sense of, okay, now it's war. The second season finale has now also ended with, okay, now it's war. And then, on one hand, it was one of my favorite episodes of the series so far. On the other hand, there's been so much tension built up through the season that not releasing any of it for a 2+ year wait doesn't really work for me. That's really like the general feeling from the fan base out there, so much that the Hollywood Reporter made a whole article about it. And I'm seeing a lot of that from most other people. And yeah, it's kind of hard to rate this episode because, while on one hand it was a good episode, but on the other hand, it was not a good season finale. And there's a lot of that out there. Also, where was the dog? We didn't get the dog. Now, I'm glad if the dog actor is still alive in 2 more years, it would be nice to, get a wrap up on that, guys. Thank you.
What happened to the Russian, soldier that was in the woods at Sopranos? This now, what happened to the dog will join those great mysteries never answered. Yeah, love these articles. I do think it's hilarious that we aren't the only people caring about our nice little puppy dog. And what concerns me, or confuses me, I guess is a better choice, is they did keep showing the dog. Like, if they had only showed the dog once, or maybe twice when it was chasing after its master, then you're like, okay, it's connected to whoever is the rat catcher, but they did give us another, so bring back the dog, hashtag. I was at work this morning, and I, talking to coworkers, and, do anything fun? Well, we watched House of Dragon. Can't wait till next week because they're really setting things up. I was like, that's the season finale. You are kidding me. No, sorry.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's like, how do you not know that? And 2, I am so sorry to pop your bubble. So yes, always interesting to talk. I almost threw a link in there. Some had 5 questions we want to ask now. I can't remember where I saw it, but I read the questions. I didn't think any of them were that interesting. So I decided, nope, it's not worth posting the link in.
So obviously one of the questions is what happened to the dog? And also, what happened to Rhaenyra's kids? I definitely could have used one scene of the dog and one less scene of Rhaena running around in the Vale with still finding nothing. But let's save that for the conversation, not the news section. I actually watched The House That Dragons Built twice because when I watched it right after the episode, I was so confused. I was like, why are you talking about any of this stuff in this behind the scenes? The thing that was interesting, and I hope we get into it, was how excited everybody was to make White Walkers and film those bits, as well as the scene when the Starks, the Greybeards, are coming over the bridge at the Twins, and they had to actually come up with this really interesting camera shot with these pulleys that would swoop the camera down like a bird flying in, but then someone literally catches the camera and swivels it to walk along with the actors in this, group coming back. So that was really cool.
That was fascinating.
That was probably the highlight for me out of the.
I mean, they could have
making of stuff.
just changed the shot. I mean, they had storyboarded it that way, but the storyboard person doesn't know what can and can't be done with the camera. They could have changed it, but they were like, no, we're going to make this happen.
Well, that might be a discussion next week. So, preview, even though House of the Dragon's over, we're going to have one more episode to do a season wrap-up, and that might be a question for next week. Did we focus too much on these details and chasing white whales of production over story? Maybe we'll discuss. So let's move on now. We got a bunch of feedback from some of our usual suspects, and Christine, our mistress of communications, is going to give us a roundup.
Yes, we got both stuff responding to our previous episode and stuff responding to the finale. So we're going to start with Pat. He gave us a nice long email after listening to our last episode. And he had some comments regarding the threats to Jace's succession. He says that Wendy is 100% correct, that Jace should be really concerned about the threat to his claim from little Aegon and Viserys. As for the king's ability to legitimize bastards, no matter what would be inferred from Viserys' declarations about the strong children, they were never formally legitimized because they would have to be declared as bastards in the first place. Instead, everyone tried to pretend that they were already legitimate. For comparison, Robert Baratheon publicly considered Joffrey his son. If that were enough, Ned Stark's claim that he was actually a bastard would have held no weight. This fact about Jace clearly matters to Westerosi society and would make a huge difference when considering the succession. Pat shared with us the article he wrote for the Watchers on the Wall website, in case anybody would like to dig a little deeper into this topic. What do you guys think?
You know, the issue with Joffrey and Tommen and is relevant because of the blonde hair in the books. Everybody assumed they were bastards. Once Ned died and everything else, but they never spoke to it really. I mean, Ned had his accusations, but that wasn't the whole realm talking about it. But apparently, in this time, it's discussed a little bit more, and it has gotten to Jace, and I understand it. And again, like Pat said, little Aegon and little Viserys are or Aegon the Younger, as he's called in the books. That would be more of a, you could go to a council to determine it or something if there wasn't a war going on. And I understand. I don't know if they overplayed Jace worrying about his parentage and all that. I think they stepped on the scale a little much on making him a little pouty and whiny about that. But I think Pat's explanation was quite good. And his article is good too. Go read it. Thanks, Pat.
Yes, thank you for all the feedback, Pat, and the wonderful discourse we shared through email. Now, I conceded that the strong children could not be legitimized as bastards. However, I argue that a king's word is law, and Viserys laid down the law regarding the strong children. A man lost his head, kept his tongue, for questioning it. That's the downside to monarchy. If everyone disagrees with the king, then you have to go to war to change things. And now that people are disagreeing with the king's law, they are going to war over it. And at this point, there's no debating or considering when it comes to the succession. We have moved on from that. Now, whoever wins gets the throne. So I hold to my thoughts on Jace. He shouldn't be worried that anyone's going to consider these lowborns more legitimate than himself. That's not going to win anyone the throne. Not while this war's going on. So he needs to focus on winning the war and worry about those other things later. And I think either between the war and the actual debating who the succession should go to, he needs to stop complaining about the dragon riders. And honestly, I don't think while Rhaenyra is around, anyone's going to argue which of her children should be on the throne after her. So maybe another war starts up, but then at that point it just comes down to war again. So I think he should worry about all this later when everybody's, dead and see who's left standing.
Thank you, Pat. And I did think that was really interesting, and it got me kind of tired head thinking about, well, but if the king says it's true, then it's true, and the whole emperor has no clothes, and what this is. So I just thought it was a really interesting debate. But I do agree with a lot of your thoughts that I think this was a bad choice story-wise for Jace. Because if you remember, just 2 or 3 episodes ago, we were all talking about what a diplomat he was and how he was rising to the standard. And, when he went and kind of negotiated. And Shannon brought up that he's the one that asked Helena to dance, right? It was showing he had this innate ability that he's going to be a good leader. And all of a sudden now they've made him into this little petulant child, which I understand why, but I just don't know if it served the story. That seems more like the, Team Green's kids more than it is Team Black's kids. But as always, Pat, and by the way, I did go read the article and I loved it.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I also read the article and very much enjoyed it. It was fun to go back into Westeros there for a few minutes and imagine some things. And I love the point you raise about legitimate children can't be legitimized. You have to start out as a bastard. So, there's no path forward for that. Jesse, you talked about how Jace seems to be acting like the Greens. And in fact, we saw that because Aemond is talking completely about this is a whole abomination that they're doing this, and it's really set him off. I think the reason they did that is because they have no other purpose for Bela other than to prop up her fiance, because that's kind of all she's been talking about this season. She has had no story of her own that we've seen on screen. So I'm kind of agreeing that it's not the best writing for either one of those characters. But thank you again, Pat. We always appreciate our maester in the field stopping by.
Yes, again, thank you, Pat. It was a great discussion. Next up, we have Davia. She sent us an email, and it's a little more down. Well, this was a disappointment. 2 seasons of the show, and I feel like it's been a 2-season prologue. The story is coming soon, trust us. She feels the battle should have at least started this or last episode. The only scene she liked was Alan dressing down Corlys, which was well written and well acted. She absolutely hates the Game of Thrones references and completely agrees with Jesse. We don't need more reminders of how that ended. Also, wasn't a fan of Daemon stuck in Harrenhal all season just to get him to accept Rhaenyra as queen. And why did we spend a whole season watching Rhaena stumbling through the Vale, abandoning the queen's children with no result? Thank you, Davia.
Thanks for your feedback, Davia. One quick thing on the previous question. If you like lots of talk of bastards and legitimization and all of that, read the latter half of Fire and Blood, because you got that coming for you. For Davia's main, I'm probably more positive on the episode than she was. Part of the dance is like listening to the music play before you actually start the shindig. And that's a crucial part of this for when characters start dropping like flies when the battles begin. You want to at least know something about them. Maybe we could have gotten there quicker. I don't know. I do wish this season had been 10 episodes. I do agree with you about the Rhaena scenes. I dug Daemon in Harrenhal. Sorry, I've defended that all season, and I think it's great. And I thought it had a tremendous payoff in this episode. So I think that's kind of where we are with the battle starting. I'm torn on that because yes, I would have liked to have seen the beginning of the war, but the scene that's going to follow, if we follow the narrative, is one of the biggest battles in the book. And frankly, I don't think they had the time and the budget to mount that like it deserves to be mounted. Now that that's almost assuredly going to happen in the first episode of season 3, I think they'll be able to do that tremendous justice. Maybe they could have shown it kicking off and then a cut to black or something rather than the montage, but I thought the montage was really moody and really well done, so I'm not as disappointed about ending it there. But thanks for your comments, Davia. We appreciate them.
The story is coming soon. Trust us. It really sums up my feelings about the season. It felt to me like every episode was setting up the next episode to set up the next episode to set up. It was just a lot of setup, and we'll come back in a couple of years. I will say I didn't have a problem with Damon and Harrenhal either. What I heard from the book is simply Damon was at Harrenhal. I don't think it would have made sense to have him doing something bigger, because that would have been something that would have been recorded in that history book. So this took a severe lack of information and made it into something that had a lot of viewers hooked. But yeah, can we get to the story, please?
Yeah, I have mixed emotions about this, and I love that feedback, and I really acknowledge your feedback, Davia. And, and by the way, thank you because I thought that again when we did the montage of seeing the, White Walkers and all this, and seeing Dany and the 3 dragons and all that. That was cool. But there is a lot of stuff and I will go back to, on Next Stop Everywhere, we will often do a classic Who episode. And if anyone listens to that, you can, on the bingo card or the drinking game, is Jesse saying, God, this thing needs to be fast pacer. This needs to be paced faster. And I do think that there are, if I was editing this, there were things I would change around to give us a more of a flow. And I also wonder how much of this is based on, we know long term people are going to binge this, and there isn't going to be that week between or years between a season, that it's going to be, you're just going to watch. Like my wife and I just watched House of Cards, and we watched the whole thing in about 3 weeks. And so we were going on and on and on. So just a thought. But thank you as always, and please, hopefully you're going to send us your thoughts to wrap up for next week, because we'll need some ravens for next week's episode.
Yes, absolutely. We want to plant some seeds for your comments about the season overall. So thank you, Davia. And the one thing that was in either the official podcast or maybe one of the behind the scenes was Ryan Condal talking about medieval war. And the one thing that made sense to me about some of their choices for how they're breaking up, when we see battles. However, the long periods of time where you're training, you're amassing troops, you're setting up your camp, blah, blah, blah. It's boring. People probably have a lot of interpersonal crap going on because they're bored. We didn't see any of that. And actually, that makes really interesting character stuff. So that, to me, is possibly where they went wrong, was you still have to have war filler reminding us we're at war, even if we're not engaged in a battle. It could be as simple as, instead of seeing the montage of them putting on their armor, we saw some more montages of the dragon riders having a training session, or practicing their High Valyrian. And we might have gotten some opportunities for some humor, which is something we've, dinged the show for. We got a little bit more of it this season, but, I'm obviously Monday morning quarterbacking things, but, I'm thinking about in Game of Thrones. Remember when Arya's on the road? She's going to go to King's Landing to kill Cersei, and she stops to talk to these soldiers, and they're just talking about life, right? That was a great character scene. We learned some stuff that was important for later on about this character, but we also got the sense of just what was happening. We had the same thing with Brienne. You know, she's in the tower waiting for the light, talking to people. You know, went from Sansa, she's waiting for the signal. We could have seen scenes like that and gotten the sense that we are at war. It's not just that we're starving because of this blockade, but there is a war going on, and what that actually takes to do. We had saw some of that, you know, finally when we were flying around Harrenhal, which was, I'm sure we'll get into talking about that. But Davia, I completely understand your disappointment. It wasn't a huge disappointment overall for me. And I do disagree about the Daemon and Harrenhal. Other than the mom sex, that's totally unnecessary. But everything else out of that, in terms of his weird dreams, I really thought was helpful to building the character. So thanks again.
All right, next we have Denise on Discord. She has a very long list of highlights for us, so let's get through it. 1, why on earth did they blue ball us like that with that ending? Come on, it's going to be 2 years before we see this series again. Season 3 had better come out swinging. Number 2, all the accolades to Sir Simon. He was all of us. 3, she thought Thailand winning over the pirates was a waste of time. 4, Ulf's roguish behavior is a sign and portent of things to come. Ooh. 5, looks like either Otto was in jail or doing some type of penance. 6, Cole is already dead in his own head. Now it's just a matter of when. Yeah. 7, for book readers, she thinks Rhaena has taken the Nettles story arc. Please see Discord for more on that. I don't want to spoil anything for non-book readers. 8, Alicent and Rhaenyra was like a flashback, complete with Alicent nervously biting her fingers. I agree. 9, the scene where Alice and Helena were linked and Helena told Daemon what he needed to do and then prophesied Aemon's face to his face. Wicked! 10, the scene that had her out of her chair and screaming was Khaleesi's eggs and her back, waiting for her to turn around and be Emilia Clarke. Clearly a disagreement with Davia and Jesse here. She says there's theories that the franchise plans to retcon the prophecy just from Daemon's vision alone. I don't know how that works, but okay. And the last thing, did we notice how the music had touches of the Westworld theme from when they were suiting up the 3 dragon riders? It was a nice touch from Ramen.
That was a great and detailed comment, so I'm going to try to quick hit this. Yes, it's going to be blue balls waiting for 2 years, but I can guarantee you that first episode is going to kick ass. Trust me on that one. Sir Simon, sly, low-key MVP of the season. Just a complete delight in every scene he was in, and Simon Russell Beale killed it. Thailand, I thought it was kind of fun. It's always good to see other parts, like, you know, north of the wall or Essos or whatever. And I think Jefferson Hall is a very gifted comic actor, and I really dug his fish out of water takes and just kind of looks and the way he handled that. Ulf, you're exactly right. Otto was in jail. That's off book. I know nothing about that, but that was interesting. I didn't expect to see him in the finale, much less like that. Cole's already dead in his own head. He's a nihilist Lebowski. I mean, he is just like completely nihilistic in that scene. And that, I didn't pick it as one of my top 4 scenes, but I could have, because I thought Fabian Frankel and Freddie Fox absolutely killed that one. I shan't comment about Nettles. Rhaenyra and Alicent, I made a note on the biting of the fingernails thing, too. I thought that was a nice little touch, especially as she turns away from Rhaenyra to do it, too. You know, it's like, I'm already laying myself open here. I don't want to even show you that. The Helena popping up in Daemon's vision and then quickly transitioning to the other scene. Indeed, wicked. And I knew where they were going once they started showing the montage, and I didn't think it was going to be Emilia Clarke, especially in that pose after all these years. But the don't worry about trying to retcon Song of Ice and Fire. Condell said in 2 separate interviews I read today that no, all that was about Damon and Damon getting a vision of what the future is and what his decisions were to make. It has nothing to do with, well, this is the real prophecy and was what it was going to be. So, thank you very much for your feedback. That was great.
Yes, thank you very much for the energetic review. I think your reaction to the vision that Damon got from the tree is why they continue on with this storyline, because it seems like there might be a split reaction with the fans. A lot of fans are like really latching onto that stuff. Other fans are like, why are you wasting your time connecting us to the other show? You know, it sounds like a win some, lose some situation. So I'm glad somebody's enjoying it. I'm kind of indifferent to it myself. We're definitely feeling the letdown from the cliffhanger ending. Hearing that from a lot of places and a lot of people. Now, I actually didn't notice the Westworld style music until you pointed it out, and I went back and rewatched that scene. I hear it. Yeah, it's there. It's cool. And I did really like the inclusion of Helena and Damon's dream. I like the connection to the two sides of the war, and especially with Helena, because Helena's got no dog in this fight, you know? She doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
I know where she can get a dog.
Oh, that's a perfect match.
Therapy dog for Helena,
She
yes.
needs the dog. All right, Condell, are you hearing us? Give Helena the dog, okay? Bring the dog back and give it to her. And then her and her mom can leave King's Landing with the dog and live happily ever after. The end. Thank you for your feedback, Denise.
Yes, great feedback. I wish I had been as sharp as Shannon to write down all 10 points. So I'll just, in general terms, that they're all great. I love this, the way you break it down. I always love when people do top 10 lists. So it was fun. Yeah, a lot of things you bring up will be in our discussion. There were multiple scenes that could make my favorite, and I'm glad that we're going to end up doing at least 4, maybe a couple more. And I'm thrilled you were happy with the Game of Thrones kind of, flashback vision. I'm glad with the results. I didn't need that, but it didn't bother me as much. And so we'll wait, and I'll talk more when we actually get to some of the details.
Yes, thank you, Denise. Your enthusiasm for these key points really came across. We appreciate that. I totally agree about Sir Simon. For me, he is the Onion Knight of this show, and I hope we see him leave Harrenhal and continue on somehow as part of the gang as we go forward. The stuff with Tywin Lannister, it was like, well, this can go the way of our Dornish Vipers, potentially. It didn't quite get there yet. It was more in the Yara on the seas kind of stuff happening. We'll see where it goes from here. So I'm not poo-pooing it, but I'm not really encouraging more. We'll see how that all pans out for Thailand. I don't think he made the greatest deal ever for them. Totally agree about the scene between Rhaenyra and Alicent. That was beautifully played between both of the actors, going between their childhood connections and now the reality of their current situations, especially Rhaenyra. And Alicent was, complete 180 from the little meet and greet that they had back in episode 2 or 3, whenever that was. And the introduction of Helena into the werewood vision / dragon dream, whatever, we'll talk about how to describe that thing. That was really cool. Helena in this episode was notably different than she's been earlier in the season. So And then when we actually got the full vision for Damon, I didn't necessarily need it to even go into as much of the future as it did. For me, last week, when he came to the realization that he does not want to be king, I could have been done with his visions at that point. The thing I liked about this one was he now understands that none of the decisions that his brother were making were personal to him. They were all about the bigger picture, the responsibility of the king, and it was never about him. It was always about, something bigger. So it worked for me as well. And one thing Christine didn't mention was 100 years of Game of Thrones. I completely agree. 100 years of Game of Thrones. Thank you again.
Oh, you are very optimistic about how much story they can pack into 100 years. So we got one more bit of feedback from Chris K on our Discord. I thought this was a good House of the Dragon episode, but I don't think it worked well as a season finale, except for the closing montage. That closing scene set up things nicely for the next season, but next season is 2 years away. All the anticipation the audience has for a big battle is going to drain away as the months pass, and we wait for season 3. All the acting was great. My favorite 2 scenes were Corlys and his son, and Rhaenyra and Daemon. And while the scenes with the pirates and Lannister were fun, they went on too long. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback, Chris. We appreciate it. I agree with the fact that I really liked the episode. Not one of my top-rated ones for the season, but I still give it very high marks. But I don't know that it's necessarily the finale we wanted. And I mentioned this before. If Ryan Condal had some truth serum, I think he would admit there's a way that I want to tell this story, and there's a way that I can and have to tell this story. I think if he had his druthers, he would have had that extra episode or 2 and done the next big thing that comes with it and then ended there. But it sounds like he's being nice to the people that are giving him handsome paychecks and saying, look, this is all we could really get to, and it was kind of a natural breaking point. And I think he's being kind of a politician there about some of that. So, yeah, I'm disappointed that we ended right there. But I did absolutely love that closing montage. I thought that was beautifully filmed. We got a little bit of here's where everybody is, and it kind of built to a lovely crescendo of 2 tight shots of the queens as they were, kind of facing each other, and then 2 long distance shots that were expertly framed. Somebody that was framed by now, she's the one behind the lattice work and the like in a cage, if you will. And then the other is just said, I want to be free, and is looking at a wide open horizon. And I thought that was just a beautiful way to end it.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I'm pretty much just in agreement with everything you said, but I think the Thailand scenes were a good length. I just think they were in the wrong episode. I actually really enjoyed those scenes, but, reviewing the episode and the fact that it's finale and, I think this would have worked better, 1-2 episodes back. Just move this storyline up a little bit more and not have this happening in the finale, and just have him on the boat heading back in that montage as part of the finale. That would have been good. So, but everything else, totally agree.
True story. My DVR was not recording the episode. So I jumped to 899, which on Frontier is HBO, and I'm seeing a monkey walking in and people sitting around, and I went, did they delay the show? Is that why it's not recording? Am I watching Sinbad, the Prince of Thieves or something that was on a few movies a few years ago? So I switched over to Max and, pulled up the episode, and then I went, oh, okay. I wonder why I didn't record the episode. So yes, I totally understand why you're like, what the hell is this? So thank you for the feedback. We definitely appreciate it.
Yes, Chris, I loved reading this. I had many of the same sentiments about this as a standalone episode versus the season finale. And it just, people have different expectations going out. Agree the acting was great. The two scenes you noted, Corliss and Alan and Rainier and Damon, I thought were some of the standouts. And I agree with Christine. I didn't think the pirate stuff was too long. It was a little odd that it was the first scene, that unusual to introduce us kind of that way. But I like Christine's idea of moving it around. Also, the other one that felt very shoved in was that weird shot of Otto. Zero context for where he's going. It's like, I don't know if that was supposed to be planting a mystery, but because it was so jammed in with everything else, it really kind of got lost for me. But thank you again for the feedback. Hopefully, our comments and the comments of other listeners is spurring thoughts for you, and we would love to hear them. So now let's get into a little more discussion, and first we'll go with quick review ratings and thoughts.
I think I said my piece earlier that I thought it was a good episode, not necessarily a great finale. I enjoyed it. I thought Geeta Patel shot the hell out of it. It was just a gorgeous episode to look at. Had some nice moments of levity, lots of juicy character moments, some great scenes, and as Wendy was talking about on the documentary, some great shots that they didn't even know how to do before they started trying to shoot it. So I'm going to give this an 8.9.
Ooh, good grades on that. So there was nothing inherently wrong with anything in the finale. I'm just not sure it should have been the finale. Now, I once told someone who had paused a song at the climax that a good song is like sex. You can't stop in the middle of the climax and expect it to be waiting for you when you come back. Only one storyline felt like it came to a satisfying conclusion, and the rest was just a giant cliffhanger. I felt like we were preparing all season, and now we have to wait 2 years to get to what we were preparing for. You know, a certain story was dragged out so much, particularly through this episode, that I'm sure they won't win any awards for editing. Honestly, the last episode felt more like a finale than this one. And generally, my feelings are very confused for this episode. So I'm giving it 8 out of 10 impregnated pirate wives.
It feels like a tradition on HBO that the next to last episode was always the really expansive episode, whether it was Sopranos or Boardwalk Empire or even Game of Thrones. So I went into this expecting a little bit of a letdown. So maybe that's why I'm not as disappointed as others. I certainly have nitpicks with the episode that we will, when we get to our lowlights, I think that many of us feel looking for a dragon while you're abandoning your children. But overall, I thought this was good. I had a fun time with it, and I'm still going to give it because, as we talked about last time, this has been a theme when we talk about music. There's enough great songs on this album that it overshadows the filler tracks. So I'm going to stick with 9 out of 10 nibbling fingernails.
Interesting. I agree. I think as a standalone episode, it was very good. As a finale, it was a disappointment. We have, Team Green is now even more scurrying around. The rats are all making their exit plans. Aegon actually has an interesting storyline potentially starting out now. I hope it could be for maybe reviving his his life. And then we have Team Black is finally putting all the pieces together. They're locked and loaded and they're ready to get on. 2 days we're taking King's Landing. Plus now we've got this crazy, what I call pond plan that Allison cooked up when she was out glamping to try to avoid carnage again. And Rhaenyra's still listening because people were all horrified with the idea. You know, Bela's like, I don't want to flame up people. And he was like, neither do I. And then we also had Helena saying she's not going to burn up people and she's not going to engage. So there was some really great stuff in here. But the trailer from last week, the way we ended last week, was setting an expectation that we were going to have some kind of a clash. And instead we got Aemond looking back at a burning place, which I didn't even recognize until they said 3 times it's called Sharp Point. So I'm going to give it as an episode 9 out of 10 mashed up Weirwood Three-Eyed Raven info dumps. And as a season finale, I'm giving it 5 out of 10 Monkeys Mud Wrestling.
Wow. That is like light and day. Or night and day. It's it.
Well, the purpose of a finale is to, you know, make you want to come back for the next. It's to build momentum or build optimism. I don't know that it did either one of those all that well.
I think that's really well said, and I'm going to echo that because I rated it as an episode, just regardless of where it's located. And I think if you think that, that's a fair critique.
So let's not be cold. Let's start with the positive. Life is worth living, even if we're gonna all die in the battle. We might as well drink while we're on our way. So let's start out with the highlights, and we're gonna start with Shannon.
I don't know, Wendy. I feel like marching to annihilation. No, actually, I had like 4 or 5 scenes I thought that were really good to dig into and choose. But I'm going to go with the Rhaenyra arrives at Harrenhal scene. I thought that was tremendous for a number of reasons. First, just kind of chronologically, we start with the dragons approaching it. Which, again, beautiful shot. And I love in this show that we keep seeing places we know from many different vantage points and how it's portrayed. And when they did that initial flyover, you see the size of the host that's just outside, not including everybody that's inside. You know, and then you saw, like, the soldiers on the ground, and they're like, oh my God, dragons, what? You know, they knew Caraxes was around there, but they didn't expect to see a couple others, I guess. And then, so I like that we see sea smoke still flying overhead while she lands, and you see that beautiful. I love the shots where it shows how tiny the people are and the dragons, how big they are by comparison, and then how big Harrenhal is by comparison. And that walk up to meet Sir Simon was good. I liked her no-nonsense approach and her wariness upon entering, and then how nobody knew how to react, really, when she walked in. They weren't like, huzzah to the queen and everybody kneeling, but they weren't like, boo, Rhaenyra the Cruel, or, you know, I mean, it was just like somebody was waiting for somebody to say something, and then the tension was thick, and then Daemon starts walking through the crowd. And then they did it like massive back shot where you could see the crowd slowly parting, and then zoomed in as it got closer, and he's there. And then they both take a minute because they don't know what to say. And she's like, you've done well here. And then he's like, they are all sworn to me. And I loved her response, to whom are you sworn? And she says that a little louder so everybody can hear it and a little more confident, you know, to start asserting her presence. It's great. And then they start talking in High Valyrian, which we all love. I thought that was great how they went back and forth. And, you know, basically he says, winter is coming and he knows what's going on now. And then he just kneels. You are the true queen, Rhaenyra, first of her name, protector of the realm. I am meant to serve you and all of these with me until death or the end of our story. And then everyone kneels and the music swells. That was just a great moment. And I loved her response when he's still kneeling and she's like, leave me again at your peril. You know, I mean, that was like, I got everything I wanted, but here's just a little shiv in the ribs to make sure we don't have to do this stuff again. You know. And then he comes up and like we fight for our queen. And my note said, F yeah, F yeah. And that was the end of the scene. I think it was the perfect button and capper to Damon's story at Harrenhal, showing that he has actually changed as a result of all of that. They can still have their flirtatious and we're true dragons with their talking in High Valyrian. And then that thing they said, I think when she was talking about to Mysaria earlier, that they're only kind of horny for each other when they're both on top, and they're both like winning and things are great. And so now they're like, the blacks are resurgent and you can see a little mischief in their eyes. I thought it was just an absolutely fantastic scene.
Shannon, you stole my scene. Actually, the whole Daemon story arc in this episode, this was the one storyline that came to a satisfying conclusion. This is what we were building to all season, and it had the best ending. It was exactly what I was hoping for, exactly what we saw coming up to it. I mean, this whole thing starts with Sir Alfred showing up, finally, and I'm all prepared for the smackdown, and he goes all turncloak because Rhaenyra isn't just following their instructions. I love that he hears the whisper of traitor when he gets near the weirwood tree. And it's clear that Daemon doesn't even hear it. So, and that was so nice, because then it shows that other people do hear things, especially around that tree. And Alice was not there to drug him. But I noticed that Daemon failed to answer him when he said that they needed a king. He just kind of smirks and walks off. Very nice to see that. And good on Sir Simon for contacting Rhaenyra about this. My only question is, why didn't he say anything before this? There were plenty of concerns leading up to this point. He was constantly concerned about Daemon wanting to be called king, not king consort or even prince consort, And it's like, that's very concerning. But it wasn't until this other guy shows up suggesting the same thing that he finally writes a letter. That's weird. Alice shows up again, very briefly. Also, only where Daemon can see her. Another little disappointment. I won't know if I'm right about her being a vision or a hallucination until next season, if I even find out then. But she drives home the final nail on Daemon's character journey by letting him in on the prophecy. Because of this, I had no doubt that he would bend the knee to Rhaenyra for everyone to see when she finally showed up. And what really made me sure of that was that he spoke in High Valyrian when she came up. Because their last conversation did not include that intimacy. It was something that stood out to me a lot in that episode, and he almost immediately starts speaking to her in High Valyrian. It's like they have that intimacy back. It was a really nice touch. And he gave us a wonderful line in that conversation. Until death or the end of our story. I don't know what the difference of that is, but I loved it. It was just this perfect little bow on the end of the story. Now, why couldn't they have done that with anything else in this episode?
So this was going to be my first choice as well, but I was going to do the whole Daemon story. I was going to do that to talk about all of that in there. And I do feel that Matt Smith has had a really good season. To play someone so arrogant and so despicable in so many ways, and to have that journey. And I don't feel like this was overly stretched. I think we got the 8 seasons. We've kind of played this. He's this surly, well, I'll just get out of here and go my own way. And then with Alice and this therapy, as we keep joking about it. And I actually thought that Alfred Broom might have gotten his head chopped off. Like, I actually felt like there was a little bit of danger when he started bringing that up and Daemon looked at him. And so I read this a little bit different at the end when they're speaking High Valyrian and he kneels in front of her and she takes his hand and puts it to her. It's this, with love, don't do it again. not warning him, just, I've given you my heart another time. You've broken it so many times. Don't do it again. And when he says, I've tried and I can't, right? It is just so, because I've always shipped these two, and that was one of the things I didn't like at the beginning is this. And so it was very, that chemistry, and then he kind of looks at her and like, here, watch what I'm going to do, and flips around, and then he's all, yeah, let's go. 100 of them will die for every one of us. And then there's this small little scene, and I'm sure you guys saw it, of Simon in the back clapping his hand. It was just beautiful. And I agree. I would have liked a lot more payoff on this episode, but well done show, giving us this character development, giving us this story, and setting it up. I just adored everything about this.
Yeah, so great choice, Shannon, for the Rhaenyra, getting her oath sworn by her husband. And Daemon, I called it Daemon passes his final exam, was the weirwood tree earlier. That would have been my highlight as well. One of the things that I really liked about this, and they harken back to Dany somewhat as well, is the person with the power doesn't need to roll in with their entourage, which she doesn't do. She flies her own dragon. She walks up the gate herself. Her protector is flying around. He's not even on the ground. But she's really vulnerable when she walks in that room, and they did it really well with how the camera was very low. The door is huge when she busts in. And I'm sure there was a lot of people who are like, who's this? Like, they probably don't even know what she looks like. So I liked how she was able to sort of stay self-possessed, in the middle of that very uncertainty. And then I loved the shot where you barely see Daemon walking through the crowd to come up and greet her. And he says, oh, this is a surprise. And she's sort of like, seriously, you're surprised to see me? And then he flips into the High Valyrian, which I loved how them doing that immediately creates this intimacy and reconnection. And then when he says until death or the end of our story, I just thought that was really beautiful and sincere. And the thing I really loved was after she says, don't do that again. And he says, I can't because I tried. And they both do a little lean in to each other before they turn and face everyone else. And I was like, they're Team Black again. They sealed it. And I wrote, hell yeah, when Daemon is the Queen's best hype man, getting everybody ready to rumble.
I loved that lean-in
choice.
Loved it.
Yep. Okay, so Christine, what do you got for yours?
Shanna took mine. I am going to give a little love to a scene that, a story that probably shouldn't have been in this episode, but despite that, was quite good. I really loved it. We're going to talk about Lord Tywant. Lord Tylant. He was sent out 2 episodes ago to treat with the Triarchy. And so that's why I think this storyline might have been better last episode, or even if they had sent him out an episode earlier and then got to it an episode after that. I mean, it's a perfectly good story. I love how uncomfortable Thailand is with the climate and the negotiations and the awkwardness between him and Shirako, the mud wrestling, and his terrible performance skills. I just don't think this was the right episode for it. But it brought the humor for the episode. We love the humor. And the absolute best question, how many wives do you have? That was exactly the question I was going to ask. The moment she brought it up, I was like, wait, how many wives are we talking here? And Admiral Shirako, I'm not going to get this right for a while, was a nice addition. we discussed before the episode how the character is a woman, but the title is something that is only given to a man, so they call her he. So we'll just deal with that weirdness next season. He actually reminds me a bit of Euron Greyjoy. You know, that like rock star bad boy attitude. And I love it. And I love how he messes with Tylan, like, have you ever tasted the flesh of your enemies? He's like, no, and I would not want to. And then there's this pause. And he just busts out laughing. I'm messing with you. This is great. This is the stuff we want. Nice character interaction. Give us a reason to care about Lord Tylan. Give us a reason to care about this brand new character. And I do. And I want to know the answer. How many wives, and did he take care of that before they left? I'm very curious about that. And a little side note, I included the link to that interactive map of, Essos and Westeros, for 2 scenes, like all the talk about Sharp Point and the negotiations for the Stepstones. Because I know that, without seeing a map and like showing what the hell we're talking about, you don't even understand why they care about this or why, it might be in question. So Westeros and Essos are 2 continents separated by the narrow sea. It's very narrow. And it looks like they've been ripped apart from each other, and they probably were. And the Stepstones, they're like all the way at the bottom, of the continent. Like, they come off the tip of Dorne, and they look like debris that got torn off from the separation. So it's actually very little water in between Essos and Westeros at that point. The Stepstones is, it's really close to their borders if they hand it over to basically this pirate operation. So that's why he was so uncomfortable with handing that over. I mean, he's obviously not going to pay 100 gold coins for every person that they bring over there to that, but they're like, I know we're not at the point that we were in Game of Thrones where their gold mines are absolutely dry, but that is a lot of money, guys. That is a lot. Anyway, I enjoyed these scenes. Wish they had come earlier. And, it's just a delight. I am looking forward to seeing these characters next season.
Yeah, I did not have a problem with the scenes at all. I agree, it could have been in a different episode, but it is what it is, and it was fun. I didn't mind the mud bath, mud fighting. I didn't mind the song. It reminded me a little bit of, that's one of the things they will make rookies do in pro football camps. They will have to stand up and sing their college fight song. And I just love the way, there's one other thing, and he's like, I really was looking forward to like a bed and a flagon of wine. And, he's uncomfortable. There's no chairs. He's like sitting there. And if he's like me, I do not do well without back support. I have to have her, else my back hurts. And and then they're like, what do we got to do? How do I have to beat this? And it was just, in his look when they're talking about cannibalism and like, we're effing with you. It was just a lot of fun. And that is an interesting character. Now, I got psyched out when they mentioned a head of a navy that started with an L. I'm like, man, are we getting the guy back that we keep saying, is he ever going to show up? The guy who Daenerys' first husband, right? The seasick son.
Oh, Laenor. You mean Rhaenyra's?
Laenor. Right? So I'm like,
okay.
So I'm like, oh, it's gonna be him. And then I'm like, oh, because like that would have been so cool, right? That he's gone and made his own life, and he has this, and this was better choice. But that's originally, so I was a little disappointed at first that happened. But yeah, a lot of fun. And one of the things, if we go back to before we started this season, all of us said we'd like a little more humor, and this gave us that. So good stuff.
Yeah, I like witty repartee more than slapstick humor, so this was leaning a little more on the slapstick end of the pool for the mud wrestling. part. But he got played, right? They're literally overheating him in the tent. And, he's got brain fog going on. It's like, I'm really tired. They lead with the completely outrageous demand so that he'll go with the thing they really want, which, well, we just want our fleet to be completely we want our fleet and we want the Stepstones. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And he even said, I'm probably going to lose my head over making this deal. But he's just so tired, he wants to get out of there. And I love when Commander Lohar says, "You are thin," and then someone else says, "but also tall." And at first I was like, where's this going? And I did keep expecting there to be that moment where things would flip into real danger, that he might be really stepping on something where he might do something that turns out to be a high offense, and now it's pistols at dawn situation. But we didn't have that. But instead, maybe those questions were the preface to the later conversation about, hey, I need a sperm donor. So there was definitely fun stuff in there. I was a little surprised that it was the opening of the episode, because it really was sort of like very disorienting. And it was nice to see them standing next to each other as the fleet is headed across. I guess, are they headed to the Gullet? Is that where they're headed to, Christine, on that map?
Yep.
I actually didn't look at the Gullet on the map, but
that's where the blockade is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
At the mouth, I would call it the mouth of Blackwater Bay, but Gullet works too.
Well, they're both the exact same thing. I like this. I commented at the top how I thought Jefferson Hall has great comedic instincts. I thought he played that really, really well. He goes from like just wanting a flagon of wine and a shower, and then he's mud wrestling, and what the hell? I understand Jesse's confusion about, flipping over, and then you see something that looks like a scene out of Indiana Jones, with the monkey coming into the exotic-looking locale. The behind the scene, the behind the scenes on the House of Dragons built was very fun on that, because trying to get the monkey to do that, and they said the monkey had a tendency to bite, and that poor Jefferson Hall was terrified of it. And then when they talk about him singing that song, he was very dry, and he's like, I was more afraid of the singing than I was the mud fighting, but he did a great job of somebody, I don't know whether he can sing or not, but it was a good job of somebody not being able to do it and trying to power through it and still keep a shred of dignity. And then I loved their reactions too, that they kind of waited. Is that it? Or are they over? And then she gives it a very enthusiastic applause, and yes, beautifully sung, a great song, and everybody joins in. Lohar, I thought, was really fun. I also noted the Euron comparisons in terms of being just a weird spark of manic energy from out in left field, which is good. You guys mentioned the humor that we always want to see a little more of. I enjoyed that too. I didn't, at first I was like, oh, the mud fight. And like you, Wendy, I'm more a fan of witty banter rather than slapstick. And I was about to think it was going to go on too long, and then it ended. So I didn't think it wore out its welcome necessarily. And they were just so filthy. And as a book reader, I appreciated the little nods. One of the three captains, because it's Mirrlees and Tyrosh are the three areas that make up the triarchy. And I assumed that the three guys negotiating with him were a captain, one from each. And one had a, beard dyed bright blue, which is originally how they cast Dario Naharis, because he's a Tyroshi sellsword. But then they figured, well, if Danny's going to get hot for him, we can't have this doofus with a blue beard, So I like that little knock to the Tyroshi culture there. Really fun scene. Enjoyed it.
Okay, Jesse, what do you got?
So I've been trying to look what is the right. Is it Huey, Dewey, and Louie? Is it the Three Amigos? Is it the Supremes? You know, but our trio of Dragon Riders, you know, Humble, Stoic, and the Fool, just, I want to talk about their scenes. We have mentioned multiple times in feedback that Ulf looks like he's going to be a problem. What is the phrase? You wake up on third base and think born on third base and thought you hit a triple.
Think you got a triple, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes, he did get a dragon because the dragon found him. I mean, there was at least Hugh showed some, moxie and sat there and said, come on. No. Wolf's like, please, please, please. And then, oh, I guess you're okay. And now he is just so cocky. Putting his feet on the table. I don't have to put my feet down on the table. And then not even oh, wow, your hair really is that dark. Years ago, someone mentioned to me at work that a coworker had gotten breast implants. And it was very obvious, and I had not seen her. And she walked by, and it's everything and said, wow, they really are. This is significant. So I had enough sense not to do that. Not off. Man, look at that. Look at that dark hair. No one could say anything to us. Just dude. And then more little birds. You should maybe be nice. Well, make me a knight then, because until you make it official, Toots, I don't have to do anything I want. And I now want him to act that way in front of Damien next season, and Damien just chop his head off. Right? Damien just, okay, enough. All right, we got one less Dragon Rider. They were just a lot of fun to see these three people all behaving differently, and how Jace is trying to put up with them. We're going to do. Rhaenyra going, okay, this is the game. This comes with the supper. That's a famous, Troy Aikman often says, being quarterback of the Cowboys comes with the supper. You get beaten up when you guys play poorly. And this guy is just, she's like, okay, this is what I've got to put it with it. So I just really thought, it's just as usual, I try to pick smaller little scenes, and I can't wait to talk about the end with Alicent and Rhaenyra. But if you guys give me a little love for this Huey, Dewey, and Louie, right? The Three Stooges.
Yeah, this is a great choice, Jesse. Ulf has got his feet up on the table. He's trash talking. He's he is what they fear, right? he's the lowborn, that we don't want in the house. And hopefully he'll turn around, but I'm guessing that Adam's comment about we'll see who's coward when it really, rubber meets the road, or we meet another dragon, or we actually have to engage in combat. It was interesting to me how Hugh is very much stuck in the middle in that scene when Jace comes in, and Jace just leads angry. He's mad already, and he threatens him. If you hinder our efforts with sloth or laziness, I'm going to have you hanged. It was also interesting to me that Ulf puts himself at the head of that table. He put himself at the head opposite Rhaenyra at the dinner table as well. Damien will definitely be walking and be like, buddy, you're in my chair the next time we have dinner. the cool thing in the behind the scenes was all the actors were talking about those scenes where they're eating food, because you're going to have to keep doing it over and over again. And that actor ate 30 quail as part of that, which I can't even imagine how he was functioning after that. But it set up some interesting stuff. We'll see what happens with Hugh, if Hugh will be able to actually sort of step out of the shadows, and because the two of them left together, and it'll be interesting to see if Hugh's the one who really checks him, or if it's more confrontations with Adam and Jace, or how that all pans out in the future. The other thing I loved about that scene was just that dinner table that they were eating was beautiful. The food and everything in that set was just gorgeous. So, good choice.
Excellent choice. And again, goes back to the humor thing we were talking about. In my notes, I kept writing Ulf as being an a-hole. But I was like thoroughly entertained by him being an a-hole. You know, it's like we knew what the character was. He rolls into the scene and he's just off no matter where he is. Before he had a dragon, he had that one moment of nervousness when he was summoned and he had to have his friends shame him into go in to take the test to the sewing. But he was the same way before and then after too. And with his feet up, and he didn't even know that was Jace, you know, in the beginning. And then, like, when they say it, he runs up and hugs him without batting an eye and thinking, and Jace just recoils. And then, of all the things, when poor Jace is pouting and worrying about bastards, he touches his hair and comments on it. Oh my God. Yeah, and we do have a Huey, Dewey, and Louie kind of mix there. I think Adam is the respectful one who's happy to be there. He's been around the sea snake, even though he knows the sea snake hasn't recognized him. And so he knows, I think, probably a little more about posh society, or how the strata socially works. Hugh knew enough to tell Ulf to pipe down and apologize to Jace for Ulf's behavior, even though Hugh had nothing to do with it. He didn't want to be guilty by association. So those were nice little touches. And I'm sure many of our listeners also listen to other Game of Thrones podcasts, but on the Ringer's House of R, where they do the 3 and 4 hour deep dives into it, at the end of last episode's podcast about that, they had a pretty good interview with Tom Bennett, and he's just as funny as you think he is. And he's just like so happy to be there and kept talking about it. And he said, like, one day he came in with his kids when he wasn't filming, and then he talked somebody into getting a lanyard so he could sneak in, and he's walking around in a baseball cap and everybody else is dressed in their medieval garb and everything. He's just a natural raconteur and a gifted comic actor. And that character brings a lot to it. So good choice, Jesse.
Jesse, you called this Three Stooges, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I called this Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's getting to be an old reference, and I personally haven't seen that one myself, but I think it fits the best, especially with Ulf. He was just like the perfect example of what Jace is talking about, and how these people... I mean, it's a perfect example of what the Dragon Keepers were complaining about, how they're not worthy. This is exactly what they meant. And I really wish they had shown us a scene or two of them training with the dragons, because I feel like Ulf hasn't earned any of this at all. Like, have you put in any of the work, dude? We saw you on your dragon once, and that's it. And they're bragging that Silverwing could take Vhagar. I'm like, dude, have you seen Vhagar? You were living in King's Landing. You gotta recognize the size difference there. This is a dragon that has killed 2-3 other dragons at this point. You should be scared of her. And just the other two embarrassed for him. Just Hugh's taking the brunt of it because he feels much more closer to this guy. They're both from King's Landing, and he's trying to be humble and show that he's not like them, or not like him. And Adam's a little separated from that, being from, Hull or Driftmark, wherever, and being a little closer to these people to begin with. And just, there are 3 different personality types in there, but I really feel like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And I'm just really certain that at some point during all of this conflict, Ulf's going to join the other side. And it's probably going to be because they don't just give him everything he wants. I mean, Rhaenyra said that she was going to give them a knighthood after they proved themselves in battle, and he's all like, well, why not now? I'm like, dude, you've done nothing except eat a lot of food. 30 quails, guys. That actor literally ate 30 quails. That's insane. In the behind the scenes, he actually said, at one point I decided, today I'm getting paid to eat birds. That's what I'm here for today. And like, the choice, honestly, he didn't have much of a choice in what he was going to be eating, like literally, because they did have him calling for more little birds, which meant that he had to actually go through these birds. And I love how the other 2 actors, you got the one who's just eating slices of meat, and he had to eat a lot of slices of meat because of it, but it made sense for the character because they hadn't been getting any meat in King's Landing, just fish. And this was like, is nice to eat finally. And the best was Adam. He's like, yeah, I just started picking at the berries, slicing a berry in half and eating that. Like, that's great. And he could do that because he hasn't been starving with the people of King's Landing. I liked all of the, like, actual actors' choices based on their characters and how that played into doing a table scene. Eating in acting is, like, the worst thing because you have to keep doing it the same way each time to keep continuity. And this scene really flowed well. And I just want to give a little shout out to Bela. She's really getting shafted on story this season. I mean, she had that one bit where she got really close to getting Kristen Cole with her dragon. But she's still there and, still keeping positive, I liked seeing her in those scenes.
Yeah, she's the clear head, just like her Grammy. And she's actually doing Grammy's job, right? Because she's patrolling out there for her as well. So for mine, I'm going to go with Helena's truth bombs of prophecy, because we had actually talked early in the season about would anybody believe her? And now people are like, ooh, this is definitely some truth-telling happening. It was very interesting how different she was in this episode when she's sitting with Rhaenyra, with Alicent, before Aemon comes in to try to drag her off to Harrenhal. And she's talking about why is everyone blaming us for the blockade? And Alicent is trying to oversimplify it, but basically she's like, we're the crown, we're supposed to stop the blockade and get the food flowing again. And she makes a comment about how she was happier before she was queen, which is certainly understandable. And then we get the glimmer of Alicent's plan, which is, what do you think about living somewhere else? But we don't get to hear the rest of that because Aemon comes in with his crazy plan, and Alicent really stands up to him to protect Helena, who, says very clearly, I'm not going to burn anybody. And he's denied the first time. Then she shows up, very surprisingly to me, in Daemon's weirwood dreams, because that dream started with the three-eyed raven, and my interpretation was Alice was like, okay, you've been opened up enough. You came here as a closed fist. You're opening up enough now that we can let you tap into the weirwood World Wide Web, and you're getting the three-eyed raven info dump. But then we get Helena in these two really interesting scenes. One, she's like in this black space. She's not in a place, and neither is Daemon. When she says something like, you're just part of the story. And then at the end, she appears to be actually in the room with Damon, and she says, you know what to do. And she was very lucid to me in that vision. And then it cuts to her looking out over King's Landing, so it made me wonder if she was in the vision right then. And then we get Eamon coming back for another try, and he's smart enough to almost try to grab her arm, but he doesn't. And he tries to appeal to her as, we're dragon riders. Mom doesn't understand because it's not in her blood. And of course that doesn't work. And she asks him, what are you going to do if I refuse? Are you going to burn me like you did Aegon? And she tells him, I saw what you did. And it was great face acting by the actor who plays Aemon, because he's almost crying because he's so overwhelmed by being found out and even further isolated, because he probably thought he was going to be able to get her alone and bully / persuade her into going with him. And then she starts telling him, even more of the future. I saw what you did. Aegon's going to be king again. He's going to sit on a wooden throne. You're going to be dead. You're going to be in the Godswood and never seen again, just forgotten. No matter what you do, it won't change anything. I mean, this has got to be the worst news this guy's heard ever from probably one of the only people he somewhat cares about or somewhat thinks it might be on his side, or at least neutral to him. So I really liked this. I'm curious how it will go forward with her character. If we're actually going to see her turn into a Bran-like, profeseer, or how this lines up with everything else that could happen. Because she has kind of come out of her completely weird states. If she has figured out how to tap into visions, this well, I mean, man, Bran was really a slacker. He had an actual tutor, and it took him 2 years to figure out how to interpret anything. And she seems to have done it in about a month. So I'll be curious to hear folks' thoughts about this, because I really did think Dragon Dreams were different from Green Seers, and this scene, it was very interesting to have it merged together, but it was also confusing to me about the talents.
This was a terrific Helena episode. Fia Sabin killed it as an actress. And the character's been sidelined for obvious reasons, like her grief over that horrific thing that happened in the first episode of the season, and then the horrors of the riot and going through that. But it was nice to see some different shades of her and to see her stand up for herself in this one, even though, given the nature of her dream, she maybe seems a little resigned to her fate, not quite on the nihilism path like Cole, but, she has a foreboding about the way things are going to turn out. I also like it because the dreaming is an important part of the Targ heritage. Because the only reason the Targs are the dominant family of dragon riders in Westeros is because originally one had a dream that said, hey, let's get out of old Valyria before the doom. And they're the only ones who made it out because it was not a Cassandra syndrome. They actually listened to her and they got out, and the rest of them all died. So they played with that a little bit in Game of Thrones. Daenerys had dreams that could be difficult to interpret or whatever, and she had nobody to really explain it to her. And Viserys obviously believes in it as well. Now, whether Daemon's dreams and visions are part of being a Targ, or because Alice poisoned him, or a combination of the two, I still think that made for riveting TV. So we've noted before lots of things that the weird bug studying little girl has said that nobody listened to that turned out to be exactly spot on. I will just say there's lots of things that she said in this episode that are going to turn out to be spot on, So she's had a consistent track record of seeing things. And I loved how she stood up to Eamon in that second one. In the first scene, she was just horrified and didn't expect to be manhandled like that by Eamon. And Allison just had to, be like a boxing referee and just kind of break it up and tear her away. And then in the end, it seemed like she had the power of character, because it's like, you could kill me, it won't do any good. It won't help. And then just walked away. I don't necessarily know that there was anything in the book about that pop-in with Damon's, and I'm interested to see if anybody explains that, or is it like, well, because she's a dreamer, because the Weirwood thing is its own different psychic network and whatever. And so was it just showing her to Damon, or were they actually kind of in the same limbo space at the same time and then quickly disconnected? I didn't fully understand it, but that doesn't mean I didn't love it. That was a great scene.
Yeah, I really did like the scenes with Helena. I didn't have a lot to say about them. I was very happy to see Allison protect Helena from Eamon, which, she's bent so much in this season, even to Eamon, but she stood her ground here, and I was very proud of that. And it was quite a surprise to me to have her show up in Damon's vision. And you're right, the scene cut straight to her looking out over King's Landing, and I don't know if it was just a clever way to transition, or if it was literally she was doing that right at that moment, and Eamon kind of cut that off. But it was very nice, and I liked seeing that connection. And she is getting a lot more lucid, a little more present, whereas before she was very distracted by her own thing, not really paying attention to everything going around her. And I wonder if that's going to interfere with her visions, or if maybe she might start being wrong because she's not so in them anymore. I noted that she said that Eamon would die. He would be lost in the God's Eye. That would be the big lake that Harrenhal is next to. And, this sounds like a good prophecy for next season. I hope, that we see the end of that. And she mentioned that Aegon was on a wooden throne. I don't know what she means by that. But she says he will be king. And it makes me think that Larys's plan, we're going to leave, we're going to be gone for a while, and when, the heat's off and they're dealing with the crap going on over here, and you come back victorious, everybody will be happy to see you again. Makes it sound like that plan's going to work. And it's just baffling to me, especially, seeing how messed up Aegon is and how willing he is to give up at this point, going on and on about all of his, injuries and how crippled and hopeless he is. So that, if we actually get a move on in the storytelling, we might actually get to see this return. But yeah, I really liked Helena in this episode, and really was surprised to actually understand most of what she was saying. It was some character development for her.
Yeah, I loved these scenes, and the just because she doesn't embrace being a dragon rider. This is not anything that she particularly loves, and the shock of, wait, you want me to do this? No. And I think there's never been a more obvious, I liked Before I Was Queen. You mean before you had to have sex with your mean brother? Before you had, one of your child killed? Yeah, I would like that time before. But the highlight to me was, and this is a little bit stolen from the behind the scenes, the official podcast. They talk about Aemon since he got his dragon, he's been the kid with the big bully behind him. And like, you can't touch me, and if they do, I'll sick my dragon on you. And all of a sudden, he, while still has one of the, if not the biggest, baddest dragon, he's not alone. And there are people can take him down, so he's afraid for the first time since he was a little kid. And I saw that when she said, "What are you going to do? Burn me like you did?" He's like, "You can't say that. I'm going to tell mommy. That's treason. That's treason. I'll have you kill." I mean, like a little bitty kid, not this, "I'll have your tongue." No, it's like, "No, and he shows his fear. And all of a sudden, his kooky sister has the upper hand. She is the one that seems more control, is smarter, is wiser, and more calm. And it's just a really nice, because every other scene we've seen her, she's kind of, "Oh, look at the flowers." And even though she speaks truth, it is this Cassandra, right? I think you were the one, Wendy, who said that in our pre-guessing. So yeah, I just loved this little scene and kind of put him in his place. And I am curious too what that wooden throne means and what does this drowning. Good stuff to see coming up into.
Yeah, and to me, this Damon scene was unique because it was literally, he was allowed to touch the weirwood tree compared to all of his other Alice dreams that were either, he was drugged or it was just the being in the Godswood. But to my knowledge, this was the first time he actually touched the tree. And I agree with you, Shannon. It was confusing. That doesn't mean it was bad. I very much enjoyed it. And we did see Aemon really losing it. And it was actually one of my other highlights was when Rhaenyra goes to visit Corlys and learns about the new name of, he's renamed the ship to be the queen that never was for his late wife. And he talks about, you need to take care of Aemon because he's going to get really unpredictable and dangerous because he's so humiliated and angry that you need to, strike while the iron's hot, basically, and get this thing over with. So we'll see if that actually is what happens in 2 years. Any other also ran highlights you guys want to do?
Yeah, there's, I can't believe we haven't talked about the Alicent and Rhaenyra scene yet. I mean, we kind of alluded to it, but that was my other one that I thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe they pulled it off again. Because, and again, the source books, they don't do this. And the first one was such a shock and surprise, and I loved how it was an inverse of the first one. The person sneaking in is desperate, and the other one is like steely-willed. And then it's even mirrored, as I talked about earlier in the closing montage, how they framed these two people. There's a lot of inverse yin and yang, negative, positive energy on here. Alicent wearing blue, we noticed, instead of green to come see her. And the dialogue in this was crackling, and the performances from Emma Darcy and Olivia Cooke, absolutely fantastic, as always. They're both great, and you see Rhaenyra at the very beginning, surprised to see her, and then she is just, slapping Alicent around verbally. The incorruptible queen sullies herself with a lover, stuff like that. And then when she says it is but you alone made virtue your banner. I mean, it's all about Eve, all-time great put downs here. And then it's the touching moment when Alicent is talks about Viserys, I tried to do my duty as a wife and as a king, but he never stopped loving your mother. He loved her till the day he died, And she says lots of things that Rhaenyra probably needed to hear. They didn't get into the dispute about the truth of Aegon and the misinterpretation of the dream and all that again. So I thought the history will paint you as a villain was a little on the nose, because that in the text is generally how Alicent is painted. So I think maybe they were like hanging a lantern on it, as the phrase goes. And if, I don't know if you guys who ever read the book took it like that, because you don't necessarily know how she's portrayed, but that was a little obvious. But the rest of the dialogue I thought was fantastic. And then when they get to the point when she's like, I'll let you in, there'll be no bloodshed. She's like, well, I have to put down my opposition. I have to take Aegon's head. And the looks on both of them, it's just absolutely tremendous there. So I thought that was a fantastic scene. The only thing I didn't really understand is when she said a son for a son. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be two sons? Like the murdered infant and Aegon? So that would be two she lost to the one for Luke. So other than that, I thought it was just absolutely stellar.
Well, technically, Jacaerys wasn't Alicent's son, so maybe it doesn't count. I don't know. This was a strong scene for Olivia Cooke. She did a lot of playing the pauses, walking away, taking deep breaths, chewing her nails, the sniffling. I felt the frustration and the desperation. She made me want Rhaenyra to listen. And the price of Aegon, I mean, we all see that Aegon won't be there when Rhaenyra comes to claim the throne. But Alicent doesn't know that. To concede to the execution of her child, that cost her. Even though it won't happen, that's going to stick with her, that she agreed to this. It was a hard price for her, and in the end, she decided that that was going to be worth it. Now, it would be nice if Alicent got her wish, to get away from all this with Helena and just live normal lives, but this is Game of Thrones, and I don't see that happening. But this was actually a bookend, to the other scene of Rhaenyra coming to see her. This, really wrapped up the whole relationship between them. And while there wasn't a conclusion, I think, in, the storyline anywhere, I felt the tension between them concluded here. I think everything was made right between them at this point. I don't know if it's going to get screwed up again next season, but I feel like this is a good place to leave the two of them. Like, the fight is over. After so many years, the fight is finally over.
If they make up, do I get a point? Oh, okay, because I predicted that would happen. Yeah, I love this. I loved the power dynamics between these two wonderful actors. They don't get to perform together as much as they did, and I'm sure they miss interaction between each other. I think there was a little bit of the, I was a sentimental to go where I wanted, Alicent to say, there was at one time you just wanted you and I to get together on your dragon and go away. And, I did love that Rhaenyra called her crap. No, you're still trying to do this. You can't, it's, if you're at the very beginning, perhaps if your children had, we talked about weddings or whatever and done this where we were all together, that I was the heir, this would have, but no, I have to do this force. And, I wonder if Alicent's like, he's in pretty bad shape anyway. He's burnt, maybe Sophie's choice. I've got to save what I can, right? And it was just, And the way that Alicent had always looked down on Rhaenyra, and then Rhaenyra to go, oh, the mighty howdy had a lover. And I was like, yeah, let's talk. We both had the same guy, you know. So it was just a wonderful, as you guys said, bookend to earlier in the season. And I don't know if we're going to get more scenes with them together, but I hope we do, especially if they can be as well written as this and not just fan service, right? Like, oh, well, we want to see these two actors together. So let's force the storyline to somehow get them together. And this, no, it works the story and it builds it. And so I loved it.
Yeah, I guess I thought we already talked about this, which is why I didn't bring it up. I don't know why I didn't list it as mine, but the thing I really liked, so I basically had to just completely hand wave this as possible for her to get into Dragonstone. We already had an infiltrator come in and try to kill the queen in her bedroom, so I would have thought we'd be on super high security. Plus, Aemon has a total lockdown on every boat going in or out of the harbor. So I guess the Maester is way better at planning travel, than he is at healing people up. Although he seems to be doing pretty good. Aegon's making an incredible improvement in his OT. I loved how the set that they used and how they were positioning the two actors as they're having this conversation. Rhaenyra's got her arms crossed Rhaenyra's got her arms crossed the whole time. She's definitely confused about, why are you here? What are you doing? Because in her mind, from their prior conversation, it's too late. And now Alicent again brings up the idea, now it's her, that maybe we can limit the body count. Maybe we don't have to, completely raise King's Landing when you come and take it. And also, by the way, I get to go, have my midlife crisis and find myself, afterwards. It was very, I'm sure, very humbling, which came across for Alicent to be talking about. She doesn't say I was mistaken about Aegon. She just more vaguely talks about she's mistaken. I always did what I was told. I never questioned all these men that she put her faith in, her father, her husband, or even her lover. She resented that Rhaenyra had no faith in those things and had her own true north. She didn't need to be told by someone else anything. And so she sort of, in defiance, Rhaenyra says, you made virtue your banner. And she says, in defiance of you, because you disdained that. And then we have that very interesting conversation where we sort of hear the calculus on Aegon, and he is in a pretty bad state, which we heard him himself describe. And it was only when he started coming up with his sobriquet again, oh, I'm going to be Aegon the Realm's Delight, that he sort of turned a little positive corner. So I did think it was odd that Alicent didn't say, well, we have a grandson for a son. That seemed a little bit strange that we didn't get that piece there. But it was clear to me, when Alicent was saying, I've been going through some things and I just want to be walking around in the woods and free, that she's done. She's done with this. She's done with courtly life and all the politics. And of course, the question remains whether she can pull it off, and whether, she doesn't know that Aegon's already skipped off to Braavos. So how will that play into the adjustments that have to be made when Team Black rolls up on King's Landing? Any other highlights that folks want to talk about?
Christine, do you have one? I just want to give a little bit of love to Sir Cole and his. It's all doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you're right. Go ahead, send me to wall. Of course, that'll destroy everything you got. You know, I took pleasure where I did. I had 2 queens, or 2, and just, yeah, I get you. And what the best part of that is at the end, he's depressed. Gerwin as well, right? He just sits there on the log next to him like, this guy's right. We're just all doomed. It just like, way to bring the party down. It just was this wonderful scene that wasn't supposed to be funny at all. And it wasn't. It wasn't played for laughs. It was like, yep, well, we're all going to die probably. No? I mean, just this like, everything. It just was so good because, you think about the beginning of the season, Sir Cole's got it all, right? He's getting to have brunch with Alicent, and they're able to have all this fun and joy and, making little fun babies, except we've got, the potions so we don't have to. And now it's like, I've watched the dragon destroy the world. I've touched the guy who turned into dust. I'm just, my life is over, and I'm just a walking corpse. It was just such a intense scene, and the actor both of them were wonderful.
Yeah, this is interesting because Cole, this could have just come off as like sniveling coward or PTSD, but he actually, expresses real, I don't want to say regret, but he really is reflective about his life. And he's talking about, my problem was that, I'm a man and there's women around. And I'm not the only one that has that problem. Cause when Gwaine says, the rest of your Kingsguard, is doing okay. And he's like, not really. It was nice to see that he still had Alicent's token. He also, when Gwaine is coming to call him out about this and potentially run him through, and he's saying, do you want to, I'll have you sent to the wall. And he's like, well, if you send me to the wall, then you have to admit that this happened. And you don't want to do that to your family's reputation. And Cole had some great dialogue in this scene. True honor is a mist that melts in the morning. And men are dust under the dragon's dancing feet. Death will be a relief. That's, the horrors of war, right? And not seeing a way out anymore. So it's interesting because, as you pointed out, Jesse, in the beginning, he's all agency, right? What is Cole's plan, right? His plan went to crap, right? He's got no plan now. His plan is, I'm hoping that death comes pretty fast. That's his plan. So, and then Gwaine sat down next to him to keep him company. I actually thought he felt a bit of sympathy towards him, but I also thought he had real alarm on his face. He's like, I can't have our commander in this mental state to go into battle either. So we'll see the next time they talk how they rally for the troops.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, and Wendy, you brought up the quotes, and all of his dialogue was just terrific. The true honor is a mist that melts in the morning. I mean, you think about that. That's just so evocative. And it's also very emblematic of his character, because originally he was presented as this dashing striver who was a true knight, but came from humble beginnings, and he kept getting elevated and elevated and elevated. And then he lost the things that made him special, whether it's because of those darn women or, his own hubris or whatever. And then the other line you mentioned, to die will be a kind of relief, then he pauses and looks up at Gwen and goes, "Don't you think?" I mean, it was just so plaintive and matter of fact, and the way he delivered it was perfect. And that's kind of what causes Gwen to sit down and is like, dude, you know. So I love that scene.
I'm going to be the Russian judge here. I have this one listed under one of my lowlights. For, like, mostly how the scene begins, I am very confused how Gawain found out about Kristen and Allison. The only thing we have to go on off this in this scene is that Kristen is holding her favor to his face. And while it's a tad inappropriate, it doesn't scream, "They're sleeping together." Like, this came out of nowhere. It's just a favor. It's not unusual for someone in his position to have a favor from the queen, considering what he's about to go do. I don't think that's that unusual. And, like, that's the only indication we have that set Gawain off, and it didn't make any sense to me. And the scene was very touching. I mean, Kristen Cole was great. I understand his depression. I understand how he's just like, decided this is it. I'm going to die. We're all going to die. And I've just accepted that. I see that. And he did well. And, I understand why Gawain just plopped down next to him, because he probably just realized it himself. But why was this here? Why was this scene here? I don't understand. And the opening of the scene did not work for me. So this was one of my lowlights.
Well, that is a good segue, unless there's any more highlights, into some noteworthy lowlights.
I actually had that in my notes too, Christine, about how we got into it. And, like, was it just because he saw him with the little, hanky? And then that he was like, he was her sworn sword, in the beginning. And he was her number one bodyguard. And I think I don't know how Gawain would have picked up that something was going down unless it was just seeing that. So it feels like there was an earlier scene that got edited out, where maybe he overheard the men gossiping about it, some of the soldiers or something. So that was one. And I had, Rhaena wandering aimlessly. We could do with one scene of her looking around, whatever, and coming upon the dragon, boom, done. And it didn't help. I don't know if I want to blame the actress or the director directing the actress or whatever, but she seemed to have the same look on her face throughout all those scenes. And it was a mix of, like, oh, I'm surprised and I'm horrified and why am I doing this? And it just seemed so weird for her to, like, leave her little retinue with, all of 6 guards and a bunch of, babies and a tiny dragon and whatever. Nobody notices she's missing, looking for her. We never heard people call, Rhaena, where'd you go? Or her saying, peace out, y'all, dragon hunting. So, yeah, I thought those were a little pointless. Although I loved the look of the dragon. You could tell it's a dragon that hasn't been cared for. It was kind of spindly and sickly looking a little bit and a little menacing. So her actually seeing the damn dragon was okay, but we spent way too much time on that.
Absolutely. This was the other lowlight I had. First off, I want to say, I am rooting for her. I want her to claim a dragon. But these scenes, I mean, I counted them. There were 3 scenes in the, the major section of the episode, she got 3 individual scenes. We see her drinking some water, implying that she's been at this for days, like, thankful for the water, like, oh my god, water. And we see her sleeping out in the open, cold, shoes torn up. Okay, I get it. She's serious about this. She's got to find the dragon, and she'd rather die than fail. But oh no, we keep going. We see another scene where she spots the dragon flying in the distance and runs after him, because she could totally catch up on foot. And if those scenes weren't enough, we got 2 separate shots of her in the closing montage. 2 separate shots! And all of that, and, I mean, technically, the dragon could still just burn her alive, because that's where we end. Like, I don't know that she's going to connect with this dragon. I don't know if she's going to claim him. I mean, God, I hope so. The story really is pointing that direction. But this is also, the Game of Thrones world. People die. I just hope they don't waste that many scenes on this. And yeah, like, we don't see that anybody's looking for her. She's been gone a while. They're like, oh, well, guess she's gone. Keep on going. Like, or is that like part of her motivation? That she knows nobody's looking for her, nobody cares about her, and that's why she has to do this. I don't know. Because all we get is her running through the wilderness. And so on Discord, Denise shared a wonderful TikTok about this, where they have Lois from the Family Guy. It's inserted into like a video game, just running through like disaster falling all over her. You're just getting beat up and pushed around while she's trying to run through it. And honestly, the clip went on for a really long time, and I realized, oh yeah, because these scenes went on for a really long time. Why? I mean, I want the conclusion of the story, and I want to see it happen. We didn't get the actual conclusion. We got the cliffhanger. And you took 5 freaking scenes throughout this episode to get us there, even though she actually started this a whole episode ago. Guys, what are we doing?
Amen, amen, and we all say amen. It was just horrible. I kept writing this down like, what? And what the hell with the search for a dragon? Yes, let's Monday morning quarterback. Last episode was the Claim a Dragon episode. So let's rethink everything, where she says to the guards, I need you to take care of these. I will catch up with you, but now I need to go. No, you're supposed to. I'm a princess. You're ordered to go, whatever. And then you can have her do 1, maybe 2 scenes. But the idea, and I thought that too, like, oh, I guess we're supposed to be, she's had no food, no water. So even though there's this lush vale, and that's a long creek or river, this is the first chance. This isn't a desert where she's found an oasis. And she's looking like, oh, I can't believe I found water in this wonderful, lush valley. And then we don't even get a payback, right? We don't even get to see, does this wild dragon and her connect? And we want to. Everyone wants them to connect. I know I've seen a little bit that's a storyline and we can talk about that in the Discord, right? Like there's a totally different storyline in the book, and they're kind of moving to this. So I'm glad, but I just think it's really poorly executed. And once again, when you talk about a great album and you've got filler songs, and every once in a while there's a song where you go, what were they thinking? This is just not good. So, and yes, you're right. Is it the director? Is it the actor? I don't know, but I wasn't moved. I didn't go, oh, good, she got a dragon. First off, because we didn't see it, but even her seeing it, and I thought the same thing you did, Christine. Oh, yeah, you see something in the sky. Yeah, let's chase it, because that's how you're going to find it. So, yeah. Absolutely. I would make the argument this may be the low light of the season.
I will say holla. Yes. Partially, it's so disappointing because everyone is rooting for this character to get a dragon, and they have completely fudged it up. Everything about this, she should have been starting to look for a dragon earlier than anybody else, because that's been her whole quest all along. So even if it was more, instead of just that one accusatory conversation with Jane Eyre, it should have been more signs of the dragon first, or her out wandering around herself. I totally like your idea, Jesse, of her creating an alternate plan. Oh, I forgot my cell phone. I'm just going to run back and get it. I need my charger. And, the real reasons why you go back from a trip when you start out on your vacation. And then also, I wrote down no camping skills, right? She's got, she's desperately running to a very large creek. It's like, what is that one spot where you need to get the water from? And to your point, she just finally catches up to it. I need to actually see an interaction shot of her with that dragon. It can't be the next time we see her, she's riding it or something like that. 'Cause I was kind of thinking when we saw her out and she clearly had exposure, she's shivering, I was like, well, maybe the dragon's going to save her and be like, I better help this girl out. She's going to die out here. But she definitely wasn't greeted. My interpretation of that dragon was like a feral cat. And I don't really know how this person who seems so scarred from prior attempts, it's like, how are you going to connect with, this feral dragon? But maybe there's something awesome planned that I just don't know about coming. But it better be awesome. And even then, I'm not sure it can redeem how awful it was to get here.
Also, one of the things affecting the storyline, and I'll say this without doing any spoilers, but some of the dragon claiming in the book happens with another character, and it looks like they're using Reyna for this character. And I know people who were fans of the original character are disappointed. And when you couple it with the lackluster execution, that's just like a double whammy on it.
Yep, I've heard mention of the character's name and some pieces, but I'm not going to spoil it for everybody either. So thank you, Shannon, for compounding our disappointment.
I will just say,
readers.
I'm just like Kristen Cole. I want to make everybody happy.
I will say that I do see a kinship between this scraggly dragon and Reyna. Like, they haven't been accepted by anybody. They're the misfits, that nobody cares about the dragon. It's just out there. Nobody cares about Reyna. She's gone missing and they're not looking for her. I see the kinship there. And they both look pretty thin. And like, they seem like a good fit for each other. I needed to see that he would accept her. That's all I needed. That's it. But and a lot less scenes throughout the episode to do it.
Yeah, if you had one less scene and then you did that, because I agree with you, Christine, it does feel like these are two kindred souls that could be there. And I think that's part of the, we don't know all this is, but there's part of this, do you choose the dragon choose you? Is it a little bit of both? And is it personalities? Is it needs? It goes. And I think this would be very powerful done in a better way.
Yeah, and for me, I need to see there actually be that connection. Like, to me, they were far too distant from each other to evoke any sort of connection. So, I think we took a pretty good look and dive into this episode. And before we go, I want to thank all of our listeners. We are going to do a season overall next week, including our scorekeeping on predictions. Shannon is the judge who will let us know how we all did. We would love to hear your thoughts about the finale, the season overall. So please get in touch with us. And thank you again to our maesters, Shannon, Christine, and Jesse. It's always a fun time talking with you guys. I can't believe after next week, it won't be again for 2 years, maybe. But so we're going to go out with a bang. We're going to make it a really good one. We promise that, there won't be a battle, but it will be a banger of an episode. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
We'd love to hear our listeners voice thoughts and send us feedback. Call us at 706-927-8478. Stop by our tuningintoscifitv.com blog to record a SpeakPipe message, or check the show notes and leave us comments. From the blog, you can also find links to forum discussions and subscribe to our RSS feed. Call into our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Skype account and leave us a message. Be social with us on our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Facebook page, or follow us at Tuning Into Sci-Fi on Twitter.
You've been listening to Small Council Matters from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, episode 118, recorded August 5th, 2024.